She said, well, being on insulin isn't really such a big deal. Maybe you want to be on insulin. And I said, Ron's really quiet. He doesn't say much. He just sits there and listens. I said, why in the world would he want to be on insulin when he doesn't even want to be on metformin? She said, well,
Lana, how did you find carnivore?
hi, Dave. Well, first of all, I want to thank you for inviting all us carnivores to come on your show. This is really exciting. Nice to meet you. Um, yeah, well, there were, I think my story is similar to, again, a lot of your guests, but mine started mostly as a result of my husband, who had a not unexpected diabetes diagnosis 3 years ago. 5 years earlier, he was told by his physician that if he didn't get himself in check in regards to his eating and his weight and his lifestyle, I guess, in general, that he would be diabetic within a couple of years. And my husband and I are both excellent cooks. He takes it to a whole nother level. He's more of a master chef kind of a cook, which is always exciting. But unfortunately, our great cooking skills, his in particular, I think led us down a sketchy path. So what happened was he had said to me, okay, well, I've got to go for my 2-year checkup. And I said to him, well, you really haven't been doing anything about the warning that you got a couple of years ago. And so if you come home with a prescription for metformin, I'm not going to be a very happy wife. And so, because I did have a little bit of experience with diabetes and, going down that rocky road with the metformin on our healthcare or health we don't care system here with my mother a few years before she passed away. She was in her 80s. And anyway, we had a thing with that. So I was a little bit familiar with the type 2 diabetes and glucose monitors and things like that. Not well educated by any means. It was all self-education, and really didn't know how serious this was. But since my mother's passing, I've been better at educating myself about this. So I knew a little something. So he called me from the doctor's office and he said, you're not going to be happy. I said, no, absolutely not. Take that metformin prescription and huck it in the garbage and I'll see you at home. So when he got home, I said, where's your glucose monitor? And he said, what's a glucose monitor? And I said, are you telling me that your doctor told you you're diabetic? And his numbers at the time, I didn't really know what the numbers meant, but I believe his A1C was somewhere like 13. And I think it was his fasting glucose was 11, something like that. I don't quite remember, but I remember the numbers 11 and 13 and thinking, wow, that's really high. I think we're in some trouble here. And so I said, so your doctor lets you leave with a prescription for metformin and nothing about a glucose monitor or checking your glucose regularly. And he said, no. He said, you're a type 2 diabetic and here's your prescription for metformin and you're going to be taking this for the rest of your life. And so from that moment on, well, actually, I said to him, please call the doctor back and ask him for a prescription for your glucose monitor. I'll get one as well, and I'll show you how to use it, and we'll both check and see if we can't do something about this. So, and I had been kind of, I knew this was going to happen, so I had been kind of on YouTube already checking around for, diabetes information and things like that. And I did come across Dr. Jason Fung, of course, and super interesting and very educational, very scientific. So that's great. I sort of kept him on my list, but I don't know if you know who Dennis is from, I believe it's Beating Diabetes. And he and his wife have a great little show, very informative for the lay person. There, I think I stuck with him as opposed to Jason Fung more because he was entertaining, right? So it was very helpful. The two of them are very entertaining, and I believe they're missionaries, so they have a little kind of a missionary plug, for their organization. But really, their main thing is helping people who've been told, like my husband, that you're going to be diabetic forever, and here's your medicine, and just go and eat whatever the heck you want, and we'll see you when you need that ulcer on your foot treated, or yeah. So I started there, and while while I took over as the food police in the house, and we were checking our glucose that first couple of weeks, I noticed that my numbers were also higher than I remember they should be. And so I gave my doctor's office a call, and I spoke to the physician's assistant, and I said, "Hey, would you just mind checking one thing for me? What was my HbA1c on my last blood work?" And she said, "Oh, you're 6. You're fine. Anything else that you need?" And I said, "No, thanks very much. That's all I need to hear." And I was really, really mad about that, because I wonder now how long, um, you know, my numbers were like that. Because of course, we all know now that's already diabetic. This whole pre-diabetes thing is such a joke. I was already diabetic. So yeah, I just went down the rabbit hole like everybody else. Now I was really looking for recipes and all those kinds of things, and low carb. I kept getting lots low carb, and so I told Ron, okay, we're going to do this low carb thing, and we're getting rid of all the pasta. And he used to bake sourdough bread every weekend. This is how bad we were. Now I understand why our numbers were out of whack. And this was pre-COVID. He would bake 2 loaves of sourdough bread every Saturday and Sunday morning. And honestly, we would stand by the oven and just wait for it to come out, and probably eat minimum half a loaf with half a pound of butter, just as it came out of the oven. So that all had to go. And kind of sad, because he's a very creative cook, very excellent cook. He just loves it. And so we had to get rid of all that. I said, we're cleaning out all the pasta, everything. Fortunately, neither one of us were big sugar people, but you could find some taco chips or potato chips in our cupboard from time to time. All of that had to go. So I kind of got on I don't want to say keto, but yeah, I guess the keto low carb way of eating. And that really helped, not me so much, but it had quite an impact on Ron. His numbers came down real fast. He dropped 40 pounds by his 3-month appointment with his physician. And his physician had told him at the last appointment that, when you're going to be diabetic forever, here's your metformin. By the way, I'm retiring. So our next appointment together will be our last appointment together. And then I'm referring you over to one of our partners. So he went for his 3-month appointment, had never taken a pill, had never taken any metformin. And when the doctor saw his blood work and noticed the weight loss, he said, "Wow, so the metformin's really been working for you, hey?" And he said, "No, my wife wouldn't let me take it." Doctor said, "Well, what have you been doing?" He said, "Low carb, and just a little more exercise." No, he wasn't kicking it into gear by any means, but it was all diet. And he dropped like 40 pounds. Just saw his belly just disappear over that 3 months. So the doctor said to him, "Congratulations. This is the best retirement gift any patient could ever have given me. Keep doing what you're doing. And, good luck with that." He said, uh, I don't offer up advice to patients, because nobody wants to change their diet. Everybody wants the pill, and just go on eating the way they always have, standard American diet, Canada Food Guide diet. And so that was good news. He came home. We were both really happy about that. And I said, we have some other friends who are in a similar situation. Why don't we see what they've done? Maybe there's a diabetic counselor out there, who could kind of help us out a little bit, make sure that we stay on this track, and kind of help decipher the numbers on the blood work and things like that, so we really know when we're out of the woods. And so we got a name from a friend, and she said, "Yeah, this is the diabetic counselor that my husband went to see." And turns out she was a pharmacist, and she had done her online diabetic counseling course. And when we were, I don't know if you've heard of this, living in Asia, maybe you've heard of this, but it seems absurd to me. During our conversation, she said, well, being on insulin isn't really such a big deal. Maybe you want to be on insulin. And I said, Ron's really quiet. He doesn't say much. He just sits there and listens. I said, why in the world would he want to be on insulin when he doesn't even want to be on metformin? And she said, well, and she's from Southeast Asia, so I believe her. She said, well, a lot of people in Asia ask to be put on insulin. And I asked her, I said, be put on insulin if they're not diabetic? And she said, yeah. And I said, why would that be? And she said, because they know they're going to be diabetic eventually anyway, and it keeps them young. I still haven't been able to wrap my head around that. But when we walked out of the office, she was happy to sell my husband a blood pressure monitor and to hand us copies of the Canada Food Guide, and off we went. And of course, Canada Food Guide went in the garbage on the way out. And I just said to him in the parking lot, I guess we're on our own. So came back home. I got on YouTube again. And then the first person that really sparked interest in carnivore for me was Ken Berry. And through him, I found Dr. Kiltz. I love Dr. Kiltz. And then, of course, Sean Baker and, the rest of the gang. So nobody, I think, other than Dennis, he's the only one that I ever hear anybody talk about. So the usual group of fabulous doctors. And then, of course, yourself. Yeah. So that's the long and short of it. That's how we got to carnivore. So I got to carnivore, actually. So Ron kind of whittled his way of eating down to meat and low carb vegetables. He wasn't quite ready to give up things like cabbage and Brussels sprouts and just the low carb, the asparagus. And we did still have, I hate to even go there, but we had almond flour in the house. And so I would make him some, little almond keto cakes and things, because he did have a little bit more of a sweet tooth than I had. And so we had been doing this low carb / keto thing for several months. He was happy with the way things were going for him. And so I kind of thought, yeah, okay, he's good. He's doing good. Keep checking the blood. Mine had also lowered, but not like his. And so we just kept going on as was. But I started waking up in the middle of the night with very painful hands, my thumbs in particular, and my middle finger on my right hand. And so so I would wake up in the morning and my thumbs would be locked like this, right? Both of them would be locked and super painful. And then my middle finger, the joint would be twice the size, inflamed, and got to the point pretty quickly where I would say to him, I'm waking up every morning and about an 8 out of 10 pain in my hands. And I would have to shake my hands out to kind of unlock my thumbs. But while it would unlock my thumbs, it was super painful. So that was happening. And at around the same time, so I guess this is the whole inflammation thing happening in my body. And I'm 60, I'm going to be 61 in November. So I just kind of started chalking these things up, like everybody else does, to my age. And of course, it couldn't be diet because, I've been vegan, I've been vegetarian, I've been pescatarian, I've been all those things. Nutrition and food has always been a big thing for me. I've always been interested in it. So it couldn't possibly be my food. It has to be my age. So I was having that. And then I was noticing that my knees were starting to bother me going up and down the stairs in the house. We were doing some renovations a while back, and the handrail never got put back on the stairwell. And didn't really matter. But then when I noticed this starting to happen, I said to Ron, you know what? I think we're going to need to put that handrail back on the stairs because my knees are really starting to bother me. And the third problem I was having, there were other things, but I wasn't cluing in yet. The third thing was I was having what I believe should have been to any doctor, alarming gut issues, alarming. And, these things go on for a few weeks and you're like, oh, well, I probably have a bug. We had been to Iceland 6 months earlier. And I thought maybe I picked up a bug in Iceland, but really I've traveled a lot and it's never taken 6 months for a bug to rear its ugly head, and then have to do something about it. So I kept going. It had been going on for months. So I finally decided, I go see the doctor. And I had a new doctor and she was quite happy to take me seriously. I think given my age and a little bit of family history with some bowel issues on my dad's side, she made an appointment for me with a gastroenterologist. And that was a 4 or 5 month wait. So when I got in to see him, he barely looked at me. I explained to him what had been going on now for several months. And he just said, oh, you've got, I had 2 gastroenterologists say the same thing to me. You've got post-nasal drip, and wrote me a prescription for what I think was Nexium. And I just felt so defeated because, of course, I knew I didn't have post-nasal drip. What was going on with me had nothing to do with post-nasal drip. It's kind of funny, though. Over the course of the few months, getting together with friends and whatnot before I had gone to see the doctor, a lot of my girlfriends had been saying, oh yeah, I've got this post-nasal drip. And it seemed like it didn't matter what the issue was. There must have been a run on Nexium with the drug companies and their reps, because everybody was being told they had post-nasal drip for, I don't know, every ailment. So, I came home again, feeling defeated, and just started trying to clean up the diet a little bit. And I looked into Ayurvedic medicine and Ayurvedic way of eating. I tried a few things like the Kachari diet. I don't know if you know what that is. Do you know what that is? It's basically rice with turmeric and ginger and all these lovely things. It's supposed to help cool your colon. Didn't really do anything to me. So I moved on from there, and I went back to my doctor and I said, well, this is what happened. Oh yeah. And he said, oh yeah, and I'll see you in 4 months for your colonoscopy. That was my goodbye from the first guy. And she said, well, we can try a different doctor if you want to try a different one. So I got into that one a little bit sooner. Same thing. He just didn't really have much to say to me. And he said, since you're scheduled for your colonoscopy anyway, if there's really anything serious, they'll find it there. And, here's a prescription for Nexium if you didn't take it last time. Because I told him what had happened. He said, did you take the Nexium? I said, no, of course not. He's like, well, here's another prescription, because they have to do that, right? So I thanked him and I left. And so I'm back on YouTube, and I'm thinking this whole thing is a little bit crazy. I mean, I'm open to pretty much anything, and I'm happy to use myself as a guinea pig. Hence the no meat May, vegetarian, then to vegan, and all of that. Took all of that on wholeheartedly just to try it out and get some creative cooking going on. But the carnivore thing, it just seemed far-fetched. And now when I look back, I think, why would that seem far-fetched? I was carnivorous anyway. I loved meat. I used to say to my husband when I'd get home after work, it'd be 4 o'clock. If there isn't some protein in that fridge waiting for me when I walk in the door, I'm going to eat my own arm. Like I would be that hungry, and it had to be protein. There had to be a piece of leftover steak or boiled eggs or something in there. I was ravenous. And so, I went through all the doctors, and then I came upon Michaela Peterson, and listening to Michaela talk about her skin issues and her joint issues. And I started thinking, oh my God, I've had this eczema since I was a child. When I was a kid, I had it so bad on the bottoms of my feet. Now I know what it was, but back then nobody knew what it was. I had it so bad on the bottoms of my feet for about 2 years that I could hardly walk. Like my feet would crack open and bleed, and it was from toe to heel, all over both my feet. And if you can believe this, you'll probably remember this. Do you remember Absorbine Junior?
No.
No? Oh, Absorbine Junior was this green liquid that had a little sponge applicator tip on it. And it was supposed to be for foot fungus or toe fungus. And it was basically alcohol, straight alcohol with something that smelled nice in it. Well, not really, like a menthol or something. And my dad or my mother, but usually my dad, would sit with me before bed and put this on my open, dry, cracked, wounded feet every night. And I would scream. And of course, it didn't make them better. But in those days, I don't know, you didn't take a, I wasn't sick. You didn't take your kid to the doctor for something like that. Like my brother and I were never at the doctor other than to get our shots. So eventually that went away. But I always had a patch of it somewhere on my body. I remember it getting under my arms and, in some rather private places. And so I started thinking about this patch of eczema that had been running around my body my whole life. And actually, I had it in my ear canals since I was 28. And what would happen is, of course, it gets itchy. And so I would just a little bit scratch the inside of my ear, and I could hear almost like a pop inside of my ear. Like instantly, my ears would fill up with just goop, just from that little scratch. And the doctors would give me Cipro in liquid. And I don't know if you're familiar with that group of antibiotics. They're fluoroquinolines, and they're found, or so I found out, could be responsible for spontaneous tendon ruptures, things like that, right? So when I found that out, of course, I stopped taking it. And I've just been, since I was 28, I've been dealing with this thing going on with my ears. And sometimes my ears would fill up so badly that I couldn't hear. Like I would be completely deaf. And it would take a month or so for them to kind of clean themselves out. And then I had a patch on either side of my forehead that had come up when I went vegetarian. So that was new, right? And after listening to Michaela and all these other doctors and just lay people out there, I started putting it all together. It's like, oh yeah, the gut, the joints, the skin. I mentally, I've always been pretty even keel. Although now I've been doing this for 16 months. Now that I've been doing this long, I definitely see what kind of things were going on with me mentally, emotionally. Nothing terrible, but so different now. So anyway, I thought, okay, I have to give this a try. So that day, I went full on. I took the afternoon off. I went down to I'm going to give Frigg's Meats here in Winnipeg a plug. When they have beautiful meat, went down there, bought, I don't know, $300 worth of ribeye steaks and liver. And as much as I don't like liver, I went there and just bought all this beautiful meat. And I brought it home and I said to my husband, I'm going carnivore. And he said, what do you mean? And I said, I'm going to just eat fatty meat and butter and bacon and eggs for the next however long. I want to see if I can have healing for my joints and my gut and my skin, like these other people are talking about. And he's like, yeah, you're crazy, but you're my wife and I know you do these crazy things. So yeah, go for it. But I'm not doing that. I said, yeah, no, that's fine. And Dave, there's a guy on that Canadian carnivore forum the other day who said, it's a diet. It's not a potion. Well, I beg to differ because honestly, within 4 days, my gut was completely turned around. Like I had no more runs to the bathroom, which were multiple times a day. I would eat and I would tear to the bathroom. I would eat and I'd tear to the bathroom. And I was always hungry. So of course I was always eating something. Very bloated, very gassy, just, the story. I know most of your viewers get it. They've heard it from other carnivores, but really, really uncomfortable. I was sharing an office at the time with 2 guys, and about 9:45 every morning, yeah, my stomach would start and they'd be like, Oh yeah, right on time. She's running off to the bathroom. It became a big joke. Not funny. So yeah, like 4 days, my gut healed up, and I've had zero problems with my gut since. Even if I stray a little bit, which I have on occasion over 16 months, I have taken a few liberties. Uh, but I get right back on carnivore, strict carnivore, after a couple days. And my patches of eczema on my forehead vanished what seemed overnight. Uh, the ears took a little bit longer, but that's been gone now, probably about 2 months in. That completely healed up, and I've had nothing. Like, and my doctor even said, "What'd you do with your ears?" And I said, "Carnivore." She just laughs at me. My thumbs, I've had zero pain in my thumbs. Uh, Probably again about 3 to 4 weeks in, they stopped locking up. They stopped giving me pain. My knuckle and my middle finger, same thing. The only time I have sort of like a little tap on the shoulder from my joints and my hands is if I have alcohol, or if I do allow myself that odd little something with sugar, and it doesn't have to be a lot. Like, I can have a square of 90% chocolate, and that will, I get the little warning pain in my thumbs. So I don't do that very often. Um, and then of course my knees, I mean, not even an issue. That stopped bothering me right away. I had my hip, like, I just started thinking about all these things. My right hip has been bothering me. I've been with my husband now over 30 years, and for the better part of 30 years, I'd be lying on my side and I'd say to him, "Can you rub my hip?" Right? It was always this dull ache in my hip, never diagnosed with anything, but for over 30 years I've had this dull ache in my hip. um, that's been gone for a long time. I actually made a little bit of a list. I have a few. Oh, this one, hiccups. Okay, so I would get like ugly hiccups after eating anything. I could have a bite of something, I could have a sip of something, I would instantly get hiccups. And I never really thought much of it until Sean Baker had one of his little short videos up one day, and he had mentioned hiccups. And I looked at my husband, I'm like, "My hiccups are gone." He's like, "Oh yeah, I haven't heard you have hiccups for," I'm like, "Forever, right? I haven't had hiccups forever." And they were ugly, painful hiccups. I might only get 10 or 12 of them, but they hurt. And every time I ate, I would get them. So that's gone. Heartburn, gone. Gum bleeding, gone. Um, yeah, I mean, there's so many things. So, physically, uh, those are the kinds of things that have healed. So I have, oh yeah, of course, I had some weight loss. So I'm about 5'7". Um, I'm under 160 now, which I haven't been since my early 20s. So what happened was, at the beginning when I started carnivore, about 13 pounds just fell off in a couple of months. And then for almost a year, nothing happened. And this past June, I went on a road trip for a couple of weeks out west. And when I came back, I mean, I noticed that I had dropped a little bit of weight, but uh, the rest of the 33 pounds that I'm down now had come off. So, and I'm having no problem keeping it off. And I don't count calories. I don't count macros. I don't do anything fancy. I eat intuitively. When I'm hungry, I eat. I eat all the fat I can. My friends and my husband will catch me eating, a big hunk of butter, and they'll be like, "Did you just eat a hunk of butter?" It's like, "Yeah, well, I didn't get enough fatty meat today." So yes, I did. So I do. That's all I do. I do drink a little bit of coffee. I'm trying to get off that. We can get to that later. But I made a list here. Energy, weight loss, focus, skin. Oh, my rash. Yeah, that was the other one. I've always had this rash around here, all around here. And of course, what was I given for that? Not a diagnosis of any kind, no suggestion of diet change, cortisone cream, which of course you want to use sparingly. And I found out when I stopped having dairy that my rash went away. And I didn't realize that until I had dairy. and my rash came back with a vengeance. So yeah, yeah. So there's that. I've had that my whole life. My mom used to think I was allergic to the sun. Speaking of sun, my Norwegian skin, I've always burned, and I mean blistering burn. Uh, this summer, because all the carnivores out there say they no longer burn. I think you're one of them, right? You don't burn anymore either, right? And you're more fair than I am. So this summer, I didn't wear any sunscreen, and I allowed myself to be out in the sun. I just came back from 2 weeks at the lake, and I have a lovely tan, but no burn, not on my face, which this area is always, always a little bit more sensitive to the sun. So, quite excited about that. But at 60, I can actually have a suntan. Recovery from activity. I recover very quickly. I'm super active these days, but we'll get back to that. That's an energy thing. Like healing. So I've had a couple of tendon issues over the last few years. One in particular, my Achilles tendon, I had a tendinopathy. So where the tendon attaches to the heel, not the thin part of the tendon, but where the tendon attaches to the heel. Um, like I like to run, and I haven't been able to run for several years because of this injury. And what was happening was I had this big lump grown on the back of my foot because there's bone growing there to protect the tendon, is how it was explained to me. And so I had this big, ugly, very sensitive lump on the back of my foot, and bony lump. And I was told that it would never go away, the tendinopathy is a slow to heal, but the bony lump itself will never go away. And so I thought, well, okay, doctors have been wrong before, so let's see what we can do about this. So I found out about shockwave therapy, and I did go for a few appointments for that, and which I believe did help break up that bony lump, but it's completely gone. It's completely gone. Yeah, my foot does not look deformed anymore, and I can, you can really get in there. I don't know if you know anything about shockwave therapy, but it hurts. So if you've got a sensitive spot, and they put that little shockwave unit gadget onto your sensitive spot, yeah, it's very painful. So I can go for maintenance shockwave therapy now, and my athletic therapist can get in there and just let her rip, right? So I think I'm not 100% sure because I did have the shockwave therapy, but I believe that I was almost 3 years trying to get that healed up, doing different exercises, trying to stay off my foot, not running, doing all these things, and really a few shockwave therapy treatments and this change in my diet. It makes sense to me that that's part of the healing because of my thumbs and my gut and everything else. Those are the main things that I've seen. People compliment me on my skin all the time. My hair grows like crazy. My nails grow like crazy. So all these great things. And I'm a lucky person. I've enjoyed good health for pretty much all of my life. It's just been this last few years that I've had these kind of glitchy things. And I just want to go back to the energy piece for a bit here. My husband would say, if you asked him what's her energy, like he'd say off the charts. Like she never stops. So this year, I kayak for triathletes. So when they have events around the province, I go out and I kayak for the swimmers, and sometimes I'll be at the finish line or wherever they need me, right? And so a lot of the triathletes that I swim with, because I train for open water swimming, said to me last year, "Hey, Lana, why don't you do a try? There's, they're easy enough. It's like a 350 meter swim, a 2.5K run, and a 5K bike ride. You can do that." I thought, yeah, okay. So I did a few of them last year just to try it out, see what it was like. And I had a lot of fun. And so this year I entered my first sprint out at Peace Gardens, which is on the border of Canada and the US. And so I like to say that I finished first and last. I finished first because I was the only female in that event in my age group, as well as the age group below me. So I finished first for that reason, but I actually finished last in the whole event. But that was okay. I was there. I did it. I completed it. The second 10-kilometer bike route, I wanted to duck out with dignity and just say, I'm not doing that again. But, I had the energy to do it. And it felt crappy at the time, but I had the energy to do it. So I did it and I got across the finish line. And so it was good. So I'm going to do it again next year, but I'm going to train better and harder.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a lot of fun.
So, I mean, overall, this is a fantastic story, both yours and your husband's. Um, a question about your situation, though. Have you had blood tests recently? Do you know what your A1C is the last time
No,
you had them?
I've been holding on to that requisition for several months from my from my new doctor. I keep going back to her for other minor things, but you know, I haven't. And that's the first thing that people ask me. Oh, what's your blood work like? And I always say to them, well, actually, I don't care, because I know whatever it's going to look like. Now I know that those numbers mean very little. And I'm going by how I feel. And I've never felt better at almost 61. Honestly, I feel 25. I do. And I feel like I think like a 25-year-old. I mean, I just feel so youthful, and fearless, and like, just there's so many things that I want to do. I feel like I couldn't possibly only have, maybe 40 years left of my life. I need 75, because there's all these things that I want to do. So I have the requisition. I have to remember in the morning before I go to work, before I have a coffee, to get my butt down to the lab and just get it done. But I'll get back to you. When I get that all done, I'll get back to you. And, I still check my glucose. Like, I still use the glucose monitor, and my numbers are rarely above 4.9. So I can keep a really stable, like, my blood sugar stays stable throughout the day. I'll check. Sometimes, some days I check every 20 minutes, because I'm curious, right? I want to see what's going on. But yeah, so, from a physical standpoint, and there's something I wanted to address too. Like, I know people talk about their addictions, and again, I've been very lucky. I don't have, I guess, that addictive personality. Back in the day, working in restaurants and things like that, I could have a cigarette at the end of the night with all the staff, and maybe have a glass of wine and never want another cigarette again. Right? Like, people would say, how do you do that? I don't know. It was the end of the night. I'd probably been breathing all that smoke in all night. So technically I probably was a smoker, but I just didn't care to. It was just a social thing, like having a drink. And so one of the things that, Ron and I talked about when we had to change the diet was alcohol, because we were big wine drinkers. The way he cooked, there was always that wine accompaniment, right? He would search out the perfect wines to go with all these meals he was cooking. And we're close to our neighbors, and we'd have friends come over. So we would put out the boxes of wine at the end of our kitchen counter, one white, one red. The glasses were there. And over the weekend, people would just come and go and help themselves, right? So looking back, I'm thinking, we could have easily, just the two of us, gone through a minimum 3 bottles of wine, more likely than not 4 or 5, just the two of us. And I was a bartender for many years, and like to play around with the drinks, like to make cocktails for everybody. So I didn't want to think about it. And so when we started talking about how we were going to have to change everything, alcohol came out. It was a big one. I said, we can't drink anymore. And we both thought that might be the thing that, the straw that broke the camel's back. We thought we actually thought that maybe we were addicted and we were going to have a lot of trouble getting off alcohol. And so we did it slow. We did it slowly. We allowed ourselves one low carb drink every Friday after work, and that was it. And so martinis, we would have a vodka or gin martini, and we did that for about 3 weeks. And then several more weeks went by, and I said to him, hey, we haven't had our Friday martini for several weeks. He's like, that's right, I don't really think about it, don't want it anymore. And same with the wine. Like, our interest, not even, I don't want to say a craving, but just our interest in consuming alcohol was gone, completely gone. And then the mental part of that kicks in too, because, well, it doesn't serve me in any way. So, you start to become more conscientious about everything that you're putting in your body is to give you nutrition, right? You're trying to feed your body. So why would I put that garbage alcohol just because it tastes good and it's kind of fun and, gives you a little bit of a light head? Yeah, no, it doesn't serve us in any way. So that was an easy one. The potato chips, all those things that, you would get cravings for within a few weeks, just gone. And I think the fact that we did that together, even though he wasn't carnivore yet, it was part of the low carb, and we just both had to get that out of our diet. So that was good. He stopped having the almond flour cakes and things like that. We kind of weaned him off of that, the fake sugars, all of that. So yeah, so there's been none of that around for a long time. Just Dave, if it's okay, I just wanted to touch on a couple more things. I know I'm going on here. There's always so much to say, and it's hard to kind of keep it straight. But I just want to sort of address the mental side of things, or the emotional, spiritual side of things, if that's okay, if that's all right. Just a couple of things that, like, I feel plugged in all of the time now, and I don't know if that, I think you might have some other folks out there that get that. I don't know if they would describe it that way, but I just always feel plugged in. I have this great energy, and it's not just like a physical energy, but in a non-religious way, it's like a spiritual energy. I feel like it's like Twilight Zone music playing in the background. I feel like I'm connected to, right? I'm connected to the universe on a deeper, different level than ever before. I mean, I've always kind of gone there, but it's on a completely different level now. It's a confidence. There's no anxiety. I feel, like I said earlier, fearless. I had mentioned to you that I was running from my yoga teacher training today. That was my first class. So that's a 200-hour yoga teacher training. And the funny thing about that is, when I talk about the connection, the energy, the universe, and all of that, is I'm not a yogi by any means. I mean, I took my first yoga class 50 years ago when I was 10, and I've dabbled in and out of it over the years. But I really, up until this year, I never went to yoga classes on any regular basis. And oddly enough, the last few years, I've been thinking about my retirement and what am I going to do in retirement. And I keep saying to Ron, I imagine myself teaching yoga. I'd like to be teaching classes at universities, so I'm around young people, and I'd like to teach classes to folks who maybe have different abilities and maybe rounder bodies that wouldn't want to walk into a yoga class, because I get how intimidating that can be. Less so nowadays, thankfully. And so he would laugh, and he'd say to me, "Don't you think you should start going to yoga then?" And I was like, "Yeah, I probably should." Right. And so every now and then we'd have this conversation. He's like, "Yeah, you haven't started doing yoga yet." And I was like, "Yeah, okay." So anyway, I started doing yoga, and I happened to bring it up again. And after that last conversation he and I had, I get an email later on that day from one of the yoga studios that I had taken classes from a couple of years ago. Yoga teacher training 2024-2025 is open for registration. And I thought, well, if that's not a sign from the universe, I don't know what is. So I gave them a call and I signed up. And honestly, I would not have done that 16 months ago. I wouldn't have. I would have just said, I'm not a yogi. I'm not very good. I'm not very flexible, blah, 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 all the reasons why not. And I didn't even give it a second thought. I was like, yeah, why not? Why can't I teach yoga, or at least go to the yoga teacher training, right? So today I had my first yoga teacher training class. It was fantastic. Can I plug Serene Yoga? I'm going to plug Serene Yoga in Winnipeg. Okay, thanks. So, yeah, okay, well, so enough about me. Anyway, my dear husband, who has been doing great, he's been a super support for me over the last 16 months, and is shocked and amazed at how I can go from having his beautiful meals and our exciting, creative food and having friends over and all this entertaining, going to all these lovely restaurants, and just be a carnivore and just eat meat and eggs. He's like, how do you do that? I'm like, you know what? I feel so good. He's like, yeah, you do. You're doing great. So I think I'm going to try it. And so he has now been carnivore for the better part of 3 months. And I think he's had I think his body is kind of in that phase where it's not quite, it's at homeostasis for now, right? He's got a little ways to go with the weight, but he's doing great. He's kept off that 40 pounds that he had originally lost. And he did have some issues with his hands as well, joints that, just one day he said, oh yeah, you know what? My fingers aren't bothering me anymore. I'm like, yeah, carnivore. But the funniest thing is he always calls himself Even Steven. Something bad happens, something good happens, something bad happens, something good, and he's Even Steven. And he is never a guy that's got high highs or low lows. He's just always know what you're going to get with him. But we were driving to work one morning, and there's a spot where there's always pylons and there's some kind of traffic jam, and he'll start going off about, oh, this stupid city, why do they do this, there's no construction going on, they're just yeah, right, the morning rant. And instead of the morning rant, he just looked over at me and he said, I just feel so happy. And I thought, so the aliens who stole my husband and left me with this guy, keep the other guy. I want this one. It was just so funny because those are, like said Ron Never, right? I'm just so happy. And I thought, and they're my friends as carnivore at work, right? So yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was really funny. But I was very excited about that. So yeah, he's actually upstairs right now. He brought home 2 beautiful non-farmed sockeye salmons. And he is a little bit bored, not with the food so much, but not being able to be creative with the food. So he's up there making salmon cakes, trying to figure out how to keep them carnivore, because
Nice.
he might eat them if they're not 100% carnivore. But I'm trying to get right back on track because I did take a few liberties while we were out at the lake, and time to get back at it, right? So yeah, that's
nice.
that's
So you are both eating at regular times during the day now?
Yeah, we're kind of naturally now into that intermittent fasting routine. I try to stop eating a little bit earlier in the day than he does. So I tend to like to eat earlier. I usually eat around 10ish. I'll have a decent size meal, and when I say decent size meal, I probably have like a leftover 10-ounce ribeye in the fridge, and I'll have like maybe 4 eggs with that. And if the steak's not that fatty, I'll have a couple hunks of butter. I eat tallow. I get this beautiful tallow from Frigg's, and sometimes I just dig into the container and I'll just eat the tallow if the steaks aren't fatty. Yeah. And you know what? It's really good. I know people think that's gross, but it's got this beautiful, almost a sweetness to it, and it doesn't leave any weird film on your tongue or anything like that. And frankly, I think it's better than the butter that we get here. I don't think the butter we get here is all that great. So I'll have that meal, and then I am kind of running into the problem where I think there's some days where, well, several days actually during the week where I'm not eating enough because I'm satiated so easily now. Whereas at the beginning of carnivore, I couldn't eat enough. I was eating 3 steaks a day, like huge steaks. I was eating 10 eggs a day. Just I was stuffing my face constantly. And now I'll have that meal early in the day. And yeah, sometimes come 5 o'clock, I'm still not hungry. So I've tried to lighten up a little bit on that early meal. And then I like to finish eating by around 4:30 if I can. Because I do like to be active in the evening. I like to go to the gym. I like to go for runs and things like that. And I don't want to have a heavy meal sitting in my gut. He'll usually stretch it out a little bit, maybe till 7 o'clock, something like that. But yeah, 2 meals, sans snacks. Like, I mean, if I don't have room for a second meal, then I'm certainly not going to be snacking. So yeah, I'd say we're both down to 2 meals a day.
So if you had a friend come to you and say, look, I'm interested in doing carnivore, what advice would you give them?
I have had a couple of friends come to me and say that they'd like to do carnivore. And my advice was, don't jump in cold turkey. Um, and they say, well, you did. It's like, well, no, I didn't actually. We went low carb, and I did that keto thing. But I always say to them, just keep in mind um, that think of it in 30-day increments. You can do anything for 30 days, anything, right? You raised kids, you bought houses, sold houses, had fires, had car accidents. You can do anything for 30 days, right? So I just tell them to just mark 30 days on the calendar, and instead of thinking about what they can't have, um, just think about the things that they shouldn't have. Like if you're going for that piece of cake, maybe try to envision the skull and crossbones on that. Same with the alcohol, right? Same with the alcohol. And the seed oils, that one I find is a little bit of a more difficult sell for some reason. Probably because everything that we love has that garbage in it, and that means they're going to have to give it up. But I just give them, those basics. So I always say to people, people thought I was okay drinking copious amounts of wine and eating taco chips and having potato chips out and nuts and all these different food like substances that we get at the grocery store. But now that I eat only nutritious food, and you can't deny that, you cannot deny that the beef, the lamb, the quality bacon without too much garbage in it, the beautiful pastured eggs that I get. I'm very lucky that we have a farm not too far that just brings in the most beautiful eggs, duck eggs, just right. Like you cannot deny that food is nutrition for your body and your brain. And I try not to get them too worked out about the high fat and that they maybe shouldn't eat chicken or turkey. It's just like, just get stuff out of your diet. If you drink soda pop, get that out of your diet. Just the garbage. Come back to me in 30 days and let me know how it went. And then if you feel like you're doing all right, then, so yeah, that's what I would just say. Start getting just the worst things out of your diet first. And if you feel like you want to dive in cold turkey, just be prepared for some possible gastro issues. Because most people that I know that have said to me, oh my God, Lana, I tried it for 2 weeks and I can't stay out of the bathroom. I'm like, yeah, you should talk to me about that. Anyway, that's what I would that's what I would recommend. Just start slow. Start slow. Because
nice advice.
Yeah, well, you know what, you see the healing, or you feel the healing so quickly. If it were one thing, right? If it was somebody, I don't know, their nose stopped running, like because their allergies suddenly weren't a big deal, which I also experienced that. I had no allergies this year, fall, spring, nothing. I had no allergies. So, little things like that you don't realize until years gone by and you're like, oh, all these things that used to happen to me, right? So, but you can get those in 30 days.
So, Lana, is there a way that people can reach out to you? Do you have any social media?
If anybody wanted to email me, they could use my Gmail account. So I'm ROGWARZ@gmail.com. Hey, I'd be happy to talk to anyone. You know what it's like. It's hard not to be preachy about it, because when you feel so great and you've had such a good experience, you want other people to feel this great. And but you start talking about it and you can see their eyes glazing over. It's like, oh, there she goes again, talking about the carnivore. There was one thing that I didn't talk about that I won't keep rambling on, but if any of the ladies out there want to give me a shout, being 60 plus, menopause, of course. This is something that I don't hear a lot of the women talking about, and I'm not sure why. I'm not sure if they're embarrassed about it or if I'm just missing those interviews. But let's face it, menopause comes around and your libido kind of packs up and walks out the door, right? And funny story, you may have to edit this, and I'll tell you, and you can decide what to do with it. So it's a quick story. So I'm 3 months in, right? Because it was May last year that I started this. So August, I was on my way to my try. No, sorry, I was on my way back from the try. I was leaving Pinawa, a little town just outside of Winnipeg, about an hour and a bit. And my girlfriend was in the car ahead of me, and we were going to meet somewhere down the road for a coffee. And I'm driving down the road, and I'm getting a little flushed and a little uncomfortable. And I seriously had to pull the car over. So I called my friend, and she said, I lost you. I don't see you behind me. Where are you? And I said, I had to pull the car over and get out and just walk around. And she didn't get what was going on. And so I had to say to her, I told you that, since menopause, it's like the whole libido things, I could care less. And, I just kind of closed the door on that whole part of my life. And she just burst out laughing. And she's like, did you? And I'm like, well, no, but, but yeah, it just, the door swung back open. Like, yeah. So for the ladies out there, if you want to have a talk about that, we can have a talk about that. And for the guys, I know they often talk about their morning wood. And I asked my husband about that. And he's like, well, I can't say it's not a thing. So for those folks who think that, that the fat and the meat doesn't have something to do with your hormones, it's not necessarily the protein. Talk to Dr. Kiltz about that, or listen to Dr. Kiltz. Yeah, it's a thing. And it absolutely, I would highly recommend, if anybody out there is having an issue with their hormones and their libido, that they would, if there's no other reason to do this, surely there's folks that'll say yes for that reason, right? Yeah.
Very nice.
Libido. Yeah. So.
Yeah, very nice. Well, Lana, I'll link to your email below. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, well, thanks for inviting all of us folks to come on and tell our story. I hope that more and more people jump on board and experience all the great health benefits and happiness that you and I have, and all the rest of the carnivores out there. Thanks so much. It was great to meet you.